Yes, so hello everybody, and we have today a special open talk. Since we are here in Germany right now and have a small retreat, and in Schwarzwald, between the mountains, we have not so good internet connection, we decided to use the second step of Pranic Breathing, the introductory day, as part of the open talk, so you will hear some of the topics that Olga is giving during her practices, during her lessons. And I would first of all, this lasts for 3 weeks, and some of the people came for the whole 3 weeks, and we gave them certain practices from the beginning. Some other people, participants, came just now, only for the second and third week. And since the one who came earlier had more time to practice and have also certain results, I would like to present to you some of the experience that happened to a woman. Her name is just today. It is the day of the beginning of the second step. So I translate what Lydia says. Olga gave her a practice that will prepare them for the second step of Pranic Breathing. And she was doing it for the whole week. And as she was doing the breath holdings today in the morning, she feels like water is flowing inside her from above, and she doesn't need to breathe anymore, and everything feels light and easy. And when this happened, she became very afraid, and she wasn't prepared to this, even though she heard about that this is actually what the second step begins with, so the stop of the physical breath, and still she became afraid. But nevertheless, this lasted for 70 seconds. So probably the reason why this stopped then was because when this stream started to flow, she focused her thoughts on it, she realized this process happening actually, and then emotions came up, and probably she didn't become so much afraid of it as much as these emotions and thoughts simply started to block this flow again. So something that we have to tell for people who are doing our practices is that the stop can actually, that the breath can actually stop, the physical breathing can actually stop also on the first step. So the point here is, don't become afraid of it. What was happening with in India is called Shaktipat. When the physical breathing stops, the 7th, the crown chakra, opens, and energy starts to enter the body. And I want also to add that since she has lots of experience with other seminars and retreats around this topic, the major difference compared to other practices that Olga is giving, to other practices which other people are giving, is that Olga gives practices and she says, when you're doing this, this is going to work. And in other practices it goes like, we will try and see what may happen. And here, every step that's happening, and if something is not happening, that's something that we can discuss and deal in details. So previously it was like, alright, somewhere around these practices are possible, for someone else they are possible, but not for me, I was thinking. But here right now she experiences that this is actually happening. So another participant is asking how to behave if this process starts. So first of all, keep simply the idea in mind that this may happen. This is not so seldom happening. This is something that is quite usual. And the other point is that, yes, of course, the ideas are logical. You know that this may happen, and you know that this happened to other people. But when this happened to you, this is still something that you haven't experienced before. And in most of the cases, what appears is a pure animal fear, instinctive fear. So if the person is not prepared, is not, so to say, has no experience with it in advance, then it is logically that it is not possible to control this process or to let this process happen, balanced happen. And since this is happening here right now, Olga will say something that she usually states on the third step. She likes to have seminars in Europe, especially in German, because here people are more used to discipline. So if they are taught just sit and practice, do this and do that, they are going to do it without disturbance, without speaking. So the people are going to follow the instructions more completely. And basically, practically on each seminar, if the one is quiet and is working correctly, then the stop of the physical breath is a quite usual phenomenon, and it is also very possible that people experience the transformational process. And the same process happens actually with everybody. The physical breath stops, the one starts to illuminate with light, to shine with light, and the transformational process begins to happen, and then all the ideas fall apart about how something should be, and this is something that most people are not prepared for. And Olga liked very much how one person, a man, commented this process when it happened to him. His physical breath stopped, and then he started to give off light, so to say. And of course he became afraid, and he started to breathe, or rather said he tried to breathe again physically, but in the beginning it was not possible. Only after some time the physical breath started again. And he said, I made for myself 2 points very clear, they are very important for me. First of all, he understands completely the steps which he has done in order to get there. Logically, he will be able to make it again, repeat this experience. And secondly, he said, yes, I stayed in this state for 1 minute, then I became afraid and left it again. And the next time when he enters this state, maybe he will not stay there 1 minute, but 2 minutes, and then become afraid and leave it. Maybe on the 10th time it will be 5 minutes in this state. So step by step this experience will become something habitual. That's how, that's a position that Olga recommends you to have concerning this experience that you don't have now. Olga thinks that in this case, the seminar of Tantra, which we had just 1 week before the beginning of the second step, had also influence on this process. Because first of all, Lydia managed to relax quite good, and secondly, to to charge energy. Tantra was something completely new, says Lydia, to her, and yes, she managed very good to relax, and she managed to go into these states which Olga described. Especially the practice with the orbit, which was the practice of the 4th day, when Olga explained the point of view of the Taoism, created or allowed Lydia to experience a lot of heat within her. The only point that she definitely felt how it moved along the spine, and the only point is that she couldn't correctly localize the heat. And together with this result, she also had came into states where she was very weak, where she needed to sleep a lot. And this is because the body starts to balance itself, it needs time to restore itself, because there are simply blocks which are being eliminated, and now the body needs time to balance itself again. So what Olga wants to give for the participants, for the people who are visiting her lectures, is something that they can continue at home for themselves, understanding the processes. Because most of the people have the idea that they will experience here something, but when they go home, this will be something completely else. Like in meditations that we have been doing, then we stop the meditation. So yes, we start here certain processes. Yes, Olga gives certain practices. And yes, Olga gives also a certain transition. But the experience that you gather here is like an embryo that has to be cultivated, developed. And of course, these processes which start here if we continue to practice them, they will have results, definite results. And but if the people who have visited the seminars after this will practice, for example, 15 minutes before sleep each day, of course these practices simply will take much longer. And in the original traditional texts of teachings of the realization of the transformational processes, it is written that 7 days are needed in order to stop physical breath. So it is not 24 days without any loss of attention, so the complete attention has to be focused on this process. And if I say days here, I mean 24 hours a day, so 24 hours, 7 days. A certain type of attention has to be cultivated. Without this certain state, if you simply are going not to sleep 7 days, then the psychological state will disbalance a lot. And this way of attention we will be dealing with or learning, researching on the third step. Okay, we will repeat now the first step of pranic breathing. So first of all, the way we typically breathe, the daily breathing we have, the deep breathing, is killing us. And it is present as a program of death within our body. So in other words, if in our atmosphere we would have 2% of oxygen and 7.9% of CO2, and our physiology would resonate with this condition, then we would be in the state of light, in the body of light. And there is nothing supernatural to this. These are the conditions which the embryo within the mother's womb is developing. So this situation can be changed. To get to know your own individual breathing rhythm and to balance it, what are the topics of the first step. And logically, if we advance further to gain results and transformation and realization, something else is scary. That as for today, since the ancient traditions were abstracted quite seriously, and people of today don't understand that the results of these practices which are described, we cannot achieve them simply by imitating physiology. So Olga stated already examples, and maybe we will repeat ourselves here, but here is an example. So for example, Kumbhaka, Alinoma Viloma, or the full yogic breath. People make a big inhalation. They blow up first the lower part of the body, then the middle part, and then the upper part. And the alveoli, the blood-filled alveoli within our lungs, they become very much compressed because of the pressure that we create. So logically, the capillaries, the veins become tensed, traumatized, and we hurt this way our heart. Oxygen cannot be delivered into the brain, and then further more disbalances take place. And sadly, but Olga knows a lot of examples of incorrect execution of practices concerning breathing, which had very tragic ends. And just the same when you make a breath holding after a full exhalation, the pressure becomes disbalanced, the blood cannot flow in the correct amount to the heart, and again disbalances occur, furthermore disbalances occur. There is only one thing that is helping the people to survive, is that they actually practice very little. But actually the processes start if the person is practicing for 4 hours in a row. We are speaking about correct practicing, but usually people are practicing for half an hour and they think they made something resultative. If you execute practices incorrect, very soon, maybe after 2 or 3 months, you will perceive the results of the incorrect execution. And just the same goes for rebreathing, hypotropic breathing, and the fire breath. And just the same goes for breathing with love, that is to be found everywhere right now. Bruel is doing rebreathing with love in the previous times it was just rebirthing, but today it is rebirthing with love. Camila and Akashi are selling their CDs and their material with breathing with love. Just Muhin as well, and we can count them endlessly. And then people have problems and they don't know how to solve these problems. Because here is authority working. So here's a concrete example from the Pranic World Festival in Italy. It was something that I experienced. I was just sitting in the morning drinking my juice, and he was doing his yoga exercises. And I already can say a lot about yoga, doing yoga here right now, but what shocked me the most was his final practice, which was breathing. So after doing all these tensions with his body, he started to breathe very deeply, very fast, maybe for, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes, I hope not more. And I was sitting there and thinking if he will lose his consciousness right now here. And I waited till the end, and then I came to hear him and told him that he is killing his heart this way. And actually he told me that he learned this from Camila and Akahi, because everybody is doing it. So Olga has such an impression that this is done on purpose in order to drive people's attention somewhere else in the wrong direction. First of all, we have to put in our focus that oxygen has 2 roles. One role is the oxygen itself, the function that it does in the physical body, and the second role is dealing with the charge, with ionized electric charge. And in a state when the body is dying, this way of breathing may give a lot of energy which is necessary in this certain moment. And this is more for you right now because Olga has been talking, explaining this already. She personally had a case. There was not everything alright with her pancreas, and Olga went to a seminar on rebirthing. And they tell her, the teacher tells her, breathe, 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 continue breathing. And Olga felt not well. And they tell her, this is a tension, this is a spasm, you have to continue breathing. After you unblock this, it will go by. So just continue, even if you feel not well now. And Olga continued. And then she woke up in the hospital, because simply her pancreas said no more. So if the organism is strong enough, then it will be able to deal with these blocks that will come to the surface. If it's not strong enough, it may have not so good results. Osho in his ashram used practices of deep breathing. But when they have been executing these practices, there were several ambulances being prepared by the ashram, by the temple. But everybody forgot about it already. So to continue our topic, we started to explain the first step, and on the first step we already explained the process of transformation, of realization of the body of light. And we explained that in the body there is a certain dissonance between the cells. And this materializes itself in different illnesses, in different physical disbalances, finally in death. But another extreme point of disbalance is cancer. So when cancer cells step out of the resonance within the body, of the symbiotic resonance, and start to vibrate in their own frequency, and our etheric body, where all the programs are stored and from where all the signals to the physical body are going to or giving from, signals like to start, signals to every cell to start a process or to end it. This etheric body, it has another frequency, it has not the same frequency as the vibration of our physical cells. Logically, the astral, the mental, the karmic world, the bodhisattvic and the body of light, they all have their own unique frequency. And we are simply used to pay our attention only at the physical processes, frequencies, so our perception range simply isn't ready or isn't able to perceive all what's happening aside from it. And our task is to bring all these different manifestations of bodies in resonance. So if we, during the process of practices, indeed actually start to feel the etheric body, and we begin to synchronize the physical vibration and the etheric vibration, then the vibration of the physical body, since it is lower than the vibration frequency of the etheric body, it starts to synchronize in this higher frequency, so it starts to be magnetized by the etheric body. So this is a law of the nature. Logically, if we go higher to other frequencies, just the same thing happens. After this synchronization took place, we become aware of higher frequencies and become able of merging with them. And Olga said already that the cells, cancer cells and the reproductive cells, they have an infinite number of possible division. And when we begin to synchronize, for example, the physical body with the etheric body, then this program of limited division of cells become erased, so to say, because in the etheric body there are other frequencies, there are other processes. So this limited possibility of division of cells, it changes. That's why it is possible for the physical body to exist for eternity. And actually this process is not so complicated to achieve, to make, because this is something that our physiology already knows. This is a question in the first place of attention. When Olga had the choice to stay with her ill pancreas in the hospital or go to another seminar, she decided that this is a good opportunity to change the seminar, to go something to another. So this is a critical situation, and for her this was a critical situation, and if this other method would work, this would help her to change her situation, her condition. And since her state was so sensitive, if the other practice would be also negative, this is something that she would perceive right away. And this helped Olga to learn. There have been two things that worked together. The first thing is that she unconditionally trusted the person, the man who conducted the seminar, the other seminar. She had known this man for several years already, and she knew that he had sarcoma of the stomach, and she knew that he had healed it with breathing. And he described this case very detailed. Sarcoma is like a very quick form of cancer, and he described this case in details. It was New Year and his friends came to say goodbye, but nobody was talking about this actually. Everybody wished each other best health for the next year. And he was practicing breathing intensely, and a very strong vomit started to take place, and he simply vomited this cancer. And he put this material, this cancer, into a glass and put it into his fridge in order to show this to doctors. And imagine the reaction of his mother when she opens the fridge and finds this glass with this cancer. So this was a very deep shock for her. And when Olga started to practice, she couldn't really be successful with anything, and her state worsened. And she had to put a big effort in her practice and put also all of her attention in order not to miss any step. And she never again had the need to go to a hospital, because she learned how to balance this. And the people which Olga started to practice with, participants of the seminar, they continued to work together, and they gathered 2 or 3 times a week. And after some time, there was a situation when they have been practicing together, and there was a young man, and he came already with very good results right from the start. First of all, he was very intelligent, and his psyche was balanced, and his physical body was also very good worked out. He was doing sports all his life, never did drugs, any kind of. And when he started to practice, his CP was 25 and MP around 60. And so very soon the first deep physical cleansing appeared. He was not only breathing, he was also doing cleansings. So after 2 or 3 months, he achieved a CP of 3 minutes and MP of 5 minutes. And at this moment, Olga wanted her own processes to be faster. So this one time, when they have been practicing together, Olga sat near him in order to observe how he was doing it. And she observed a very interesting thing. When he was breathing, there wasn't any movement at all, neither his chest, neither his belly or the ribs. So when he was practicing, everything was completely still. Olga tried to synchronize with his way of breathing and do it the same way as he was practicing. In the beginning, it wasn't possible in any way. After some time, Olga's body started to get used to this, and the psychological state calmed down and also get used to this, and she became able to breathe like this as well. Olga had at this time very big issues with her spine, so she wasn't even able to sit correctly. And maybe after 1 day or after 1.5 days, certain energy appeared within Olga that started to support her. And so Olga sat for 4 days in a row. And on this 4th day, Kundalini started to rise. First of all, it burned away any pollution in the spine, and it also burned away all the salt. And because of the salt in the spine, the vertebrae moved from their position. And in this new created space between the vertebrae, the spinal cord started to go into this space, and this way a hernia was created, resulting. So it's a name for this. The doctors recommended her to make a surgery to put metals into her spine or something like this. So when the Kundalini rised, it simply burnt away all these problems, all this hernia. It also burnt Olga's face very strong, so it was very strong visible that she had burnt marks. Like a burnt mark of the 3rd degree, I don't know if it's the same in English. But the energetical burnt marks, they vanish very soon. But the energetical pushes, hits, they are very critical because they simply tore apart the physical material. But the fact remains that since then 25 years passed by and she has no problems with her back. And Olga's body is still very flexible. So if you are doing it correctly, at a certain point the energetical resources include themselves in the process and you actually don't need to sleep. And if Olga is in a good state, she sleeps around 2 hours per day. But in the beginning, Olga was sleeping in the sitting position. So she was sitting, then she understood that now her consciousness is switching off, she's falling asleep, and she fell, and then she woke up again and continued, and this repeated itself. So you will start to practice now, and the first day you will simply sleep the whole time. We have already somebody who has experienced it from the first day, because balances are being restored and rebalanced. Logically, it's something that Olga expects that some of you will actually sleep a lot. And this is good, allowed to take place. So if you feel like this, allow it. And this way, Olga, made contact with the etheric body of her own etheric body, and found a way to practice it, to get connected with it. And this moment also caused Olga to remember that she already has in her previous life experience of pranic breathing. The first time when Olga experienced it was when she was 13 years old. It was then that she drowned underwater, she drowned it. And when she was drowning, she didn't try to survive actually, didn't try to come back to the surface, she simply relaxed and then let her go. And her attention was redirected this way, and then she wasn't suffocating. And the point is that it was very far from the coast, and it was very deep. Olga does not know how deep. But when her body actually reached the ground, and when she reached the ground, she was caught in the seaweed. And now Olga will tell something that is not for the camera, so remember to cut it off. That's actually when she first met mermaids, because she redirected her attention to the etheric world, to the etheric plane. Yes, concerning the question how to redirect the attention, that's what we will be doing here. So actually when Olga reached the seabed and was caught inside of them, she didn't like this feeling, and that was the moment when her attention came back to the physical body and she started to suffocate, started to struggle. And since this was a very deep on the surface, Olga couldn't come back on her own. She didn't have enough breath, oxygen. So then she relaxed once again. She was forced to do this. And then again start to breathe pranically, and only by doing so she was able to save herself to come back. And Olga said this already, the etheric breathing is a natural process for us, because the etheric body is quite dense and we can resonate with it. And when we eliminate the disbalance in our mind, in the psychological state, then we can go further to the higher frequencies. In Italy, on the festival there was an interesting situation. This you will be able to see later on video. Olga showed to people what is the higher matter of light, the highest matter of light. And she asked people to put their hands on her body. And before that, she showed to people how to start breathing pranically, etherically. And one girl managed to do it right away. And when Olga asked the people to lay their hands on her body, the first person said that he only perceives that Olga's body is not moving, like she's not breathing, and that's it. The second person was doing energetical practices for many years. He was sure that he will be feeling something, perceiving. And he said something like he feels when he touches her like there is no body at all, like he is putting his hand into water or something like this. And then the girl who managed to open her channels right away put her hand on Olga's belly. She perceived the concrete sensation that Olga is telling about, the palung, and she described it according to this without even knowing what Olga is making there. This palung has a major role in transformation, and this is also something that we will discuss in details here. And the second experience of Olga, after the rise of Kundalini, after she had her health issues cured, the second experience was also connected with stop of breath. And this second experience with stop of breathing, it happened actually on the foundation of complete trust, complete surrender and complete openness to the teacher. It was a very funny moment in Olga's life. Olga came to him and asked him, "How did you cure cancer?" And he said, "I stopped my physical breath." Olga says, "Thank you," and then she went away. So now 25 years passed by, and she wonders about herself back then. In what way had she to be thinking that she didn't even ask him how he did it, what practice he had been doing, or is there any technique or something like this? He simply said, "Stop breathing." Olga said, "All right, I understand the goal." Then she went away and started doing. And it stopped after 5 days. So you have here right now the chance to make this experience as well. And especially in some cases this process is already started. And when Olga's physical breathing stopped, she took a knife and cut her arm. And the regeneration took place immediately. But Olga was for 40 minutes in this condition. Olga's liver cured. All the fillings in the teeth fell out, and the enamel of the teeth started to restore. So it was very painful because it happened very fast. She perceived through every single teeth, along every single nerve, electric charge going through, and it was very painful. And at this moment Olga had all her teeth, so she doesn't know if some were missing, would they have been recovered or not. But they started to recover, and she understood understood two things back then. First of all, it is not complicated. And secondly, that this will completely change the physiology. And since Olga wasn't ready to this concerning her psychological preparation, and she actually needed to go to work, she put her whole effort into tried to start the physical breath again. During these 40 minutes, all of the serious health issues were completely cured. So her liver, her pancreas and other issues cured completely. And the bones of the skeleton came to their right place. Olga was already talking about the fact that our skeleton is not in the right position. Please take a look how the ribs between the hips and the ribs, how they are positioned. Here are the bones of the hips, and here immediately ribs start. So there is no space between ribs and the hips. So this means that the ribs opened. So do you feel the free space between it? No.
It's no space.
No space, yeah. So same things has to happen with you. So basically, first of all, the bones of the hips have to open. Then that's how our chest is right now. First it has then to rise a little bit and then open like this. And when this happened to Olga and she had to go to work in a few minutes, it was like a very strong movement. It happened like this and like this very strongly, and her ribs stood like this, and she was thinking, how am I supposed to go to work like this? So when these ribs, the chest opened, this was the moment when the organs around it, the liver, the pancreas, became healed. But Olga wasn't thinking about healing. She simply discovered something new. She stepped into the unknown. Basically, this was the beginning for any further transformations that happened with Olga. So far, everything clear? So the goal is to stop the breath. You have 5 days. After 5 days, we will come and check if you're breathing. Any questions? 5 days to stop the breathing. As Olga already said, in the original traditional texts in the Tibetan culture, for example, it is written that it takes 7 days. But also you can take 70 years to start, whatever you like. Because when the person is not prepared to all this process, Olga strongly recommends to take your time, because this will mean that you have to change very suddenly not only the psychological level but also your social situation. The only difference to the traditional teaching is that they say in order to make the transformation complete after 7 days, this practitioner has to be prepared, he has to be very organized, his attention must be able to be focused on something totally. So maybe once in thousands of years someone may make this by accidents, by doing everything correctly. And that's why a lot of major serious practices are given to people, so they can practice it for centuries and decades. So for example, Kumbhaka, Vinoma Viloma, those things you can practice them for decades. But it is very clearly stated that it is possible to achieve during 7 days, after 7 days. And the stop of physical breathing with the person who Olga was talking about, it took also 7 days. And he wasn't breathing for 3 days. Logically, he wasn't eating or sleeping. So to say, in other words, for 3 days he was in a state of kind of dynamic meditation. So we know and we are used to the thought that in samadhi a person is able not to breathe. But at this moment he is practically not present in his body, so he is not moving at all.
Здесь ты присутствуешь полностью, и осознаешь, и двигаешься.
But here you are present completely, you are aware of what's going on, you are moving. That's not the same samadhi as what we hear of. And he wasn't breathing for 3 days, and after 3 days his health problems were cured. In other words, you can restore your body, but a lot of attention is needed. In Olga's case, it took 5 days, because she was doing physical work every second day. So that's why the processes were quicker. But 5 days non-stop awareness, attention in the right direction. So she was physically working, but at the same time her attention was always on the etheric breath. So we are going to Dominican Republic soon with a group for 3 months. And we will do this process very slowly and very accurate. And as scheduled, we will be practicing 2 hours on the land and 2 hours underwater. And then the correction will be very fast. The balance will be taking place very fast. Adding the fact to this that the people shall also be transiting to life without food. So in other words, we want to create perfect conditions for this process of transformation to fully take place. So each step has to be will be explained in detail, so people will completely understand the process. Olga will tell now a story that she doesn't tell often. When with 14 and 15 years, astral travels started to happen with Olga. Olga liked it there a lot and didn't want to return to her body. And Olga wanted to die. So she was fasting and drinking coffee and very actively killing her body. So simply to end the story with suicide is somehow not polite. But this way, by doing it this way, the body dies on its own, so Olga is not at fault, so to say. And with 22 years, Olga had cancer, the first step. And it was exactly that time, with 22 years, when she met her teacher, and he told her that without enlightenment, this wheel of samsara, or this karma, will simply repeat itself, so she will not find freedom. And her astral travel will also end at some point, and then she will simply have to return back. And she understood that since she created this situation all by herself, by killing her body for 8 years, then it's her responsibility and possibility to return it back. But to this moment, aside from cancer, she had very serious, incredible, big problems with her spine. And the doctor said, we need to do a surgery right away, because if something happens, she will be paralyzed right away. And once she was paralyzed, and for 4 hours Olga couldn't move even a finger. And since Olga was alone, she couldn't even call an ambulance. And during these 4 hours, Olga was working with the impulses and connections that were running through her body. So it took Olga 4 hours to be able to move again. But Olga wants to say something else. And Olga thought, what meaning is to make a surgery with her spine if the problem is cancer? And if she didn't deal with the cancer, it makes no sense to deal with the spine. But she wasn't able to sit, and she wasn't able to walk. And since her spine was disturbed, inflammatory processes started in the sciatic nerves. In the middle of the feet we have a knot of a lot of nerves coming together. For example, if gangrene starts with a person, and it starts with the toes and goes and reaches this point with the nerves, then the person will die immediately. That's why the toes will be cut off right away. But Olga had no gangrene, but she couldn't step on the feet, on this point. It was such a pain that after each step she had to recover from this step. And she was walking on her toes. And Olga came to the seminar after reanimation. And this teacher, he was very rough, he was very direct and not polite, so to say. And he said, relax your belly. And Olga doesn't feel her belly since she doesn't have connection with these muscles. And he says, are you stupid or what? Don't you understand these simple things? You have to relax your belly. How is Olga able to relax it if she isn't even possible to pull it like this inside? And practically her husband, if he wouldn't be, Olga would probably not manage to survive this. He brought a pillow of the size of this table. Olga doesn't know where he managed to find this, and he made for her something, a preparation with bands around her torso. In the back there was a hook, and he took a thick rope, bended it around the hook, then around a commode, a big commode, and then made it there so it wouldn't get loose. So practically Olga was hanging down from the commode, and he put this pillow under Olga, so her legs were hanging down. And in this situation Olga learned how to relax her body, because to sit she was not able anyway. The first thing that Olga started with, Olga was breathing only with the mouth. And as soon as she started to breathe with the nose, she suffocated right away. And she took a tape, so she closed, and she understood that if people say their eyeballs are falling out of the skulls, this is not something that you just say, because this was happening with her. For 3 days she was simply suffocating non-stop, and everything was like. And on the 4th day she started to breathe with the nose. And this was her first victory. The second victory is that Olga had was about the fact that she had no CP at all, and the MP was 3 seconds. So in other words, she had to live a few months. And then CP appeared and her MP went up to 6 seconds. So this was the lowest level, which means it's a cancer. And Olga started to work with it. And she was hanging on this cardboard, and Olga was doing all this, and then he came and put her down, and after this back on the cardboard. And the first week she was simply sleeping on this cardboard, what we are talking about, that we feel the desire to sleep, because he hangs her there and she simply falls asleep. After this, energy started to appear, which helped her to hold her back. So he stopped to lift Olga to the cupboard. It was very painful for the legs to sit. And then Olga started to sit on this big pillow, and her foot wasn't able to relax at all. It was always like this, so very tense. If someone is able to do this, Olga is not wasn't doing it for a long time. So if someone is able to put Benson legs like this. Okay, what she wants to show is that she's able to touch with her toes the ground. And then pain started to occur more and more. The only difference is that the pain that was before was destructive. And then pain started to recover, so pain from the recovery started to occur. Olga is sitting there, and tears are simply flowing down her cheeks. And she could do whatever she wanted, nothing changed. One funny situation was at that time. Nothing similar ever happened again. We had a balcony surrounded with glass, so she opened the window for the fresh air, and the door to the balcony was closed. There are small windows in the top part of the... This window was opening inside the room. At this moment, Olga was sitting, it was her 3rd day, and it twisted her neck, so she wasn't able to lift her head in order to look up. And she was walking like this, with it. So some nerve was very strongly tensed somewhere, and she wasn't able to do anything. And so in this state, Olga is sitting for 3 days, it is the 3rd day, and Olga is going crazy because of the pain. And she's sitting. And then suddenly in her ears she hears this sound, and then because of the shock she springs up and watches around her, and this caused her neck to relax or to come back. It happened so that a big crow flew into the balcony, and then through the small window between the balcony and the room, and then sat on this window leaf, and then gave her voice. 25 years passed by, and Olga still cannot understand what this crow needed in her room. So please bear in mind that this seminar will cause a lot of pain, but we have to learn to distinguish the pain, the destructive and the creative. And there is pain when something is disturbed and some certain actions need to be taken right away.
И я училась именно сначала этому развлечению ощущений.
And this was the first thing that Olga was learning, to distinguish the signals and to learn what she is needing. If something is broken, or something needs to be repaired, or something is growing, or you simply have to observe and don't disturb the work that is happening right now. That's why all your signals that you interpret as, here it is stretching, here it is going there, and here it is cut off. It doesn't have really big meaning right now. There's only one thing that is in the first place important, if you want to survive or not. Because please understand that you will die, and this is nothing horrible. Everything dies. And Olga suggests you won't believe that you will be reborn in a certain way that you like to have, or that your soul will survive in some way, because Olga says you don't have a soul. And when you die, this will be the final death, and the universe will not lose anything. It will be the opposite, it will find its balance again. And from the personal position, this is not interesting. Olga is interested in immortality not in order to make her personal story longer, but in order to open up the limitations of her possibilities about which nobody would tell her otherwise. They are nowhere to be found in no books, and even if we find them, we won't be able to understand them unless we experience it. And that's worth the practice. We have two possibilities, to die or to transform. In any way, both ways are a change from the situation we are here right now in. So in other words, anyway, whatever ideas you have about yourself, whatever you think about yourself, this will go away, vanish. And this is a very deep and individual process. Olga did what nobody did before her. It is thanks to the fact that she experienced these possibilities behind the limitations after her experience with the dissolution of her physical body into the light. And when this happened, she simply saw the whole system from above. And this allowed her, as she returned, to make this system into step by step, and on each step to tell the results and the problems and the obstacles. And but Olga understands pretty good that when she works with people who don't have this experience. If you would have been for some centuries in traditional teaching, education, and you would get to know the teaching of these traditional masters, of these closed temples, so that not so official what we know about it. You would understand that the results which we experience here are gathered after 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. They are gathered there for decades. And Olga had such a person. He was sitting for 20 years in a temple. He is a Lama in Russia, and you can find feedback of him on YouTube. We have been in Crimea for 3 weeks, 3 months working, and he had not only made great steps in terms of transformation of the physical body into the direction of life without food and enlightenment as well, but also concerning the breathing and experiencing this transformation of the body into light. And when Olga is conducting her seminars, she will tell a secret now. When a group gathers, Olga looks at these people and thinks, oh my god, it's the next group of dendroids. And the connection to this word is that in this condition people are not able to do anything. And the next thought that appears in Olga's mind, we have to close and quit the seminar for right now. And after 10 days, people have results, and this becomes a mystery to Olga. So Olga is very surprised about the fact that it is actually working, that people are actually managing to gain results. It is more wondering her, surprising her, than the fact that it is not taking place. But people at the beginning cannot imagine how much efforts they have to put into these results. And Olga wasn't giving this seminar for 20 years because she wasn't sure if it is actually possible to do for normal people. And Olga made all of it, but you can count Olga as not very normal, not even a person. And but when people are doing this is something that is remarkable. There is a condition, and Olga found this condition within 4 or 5 people during her life. And this condition is present in Olga. This makes her different from us. And this condition had also the teacher who taught Olga, so her first teacher. And when he got in touch with each other, this was the interesting point for Olga about him, because she wasn't finding these conditions within anybody else. Olga cannot say that he taught her actually something. Everything that Olga is presenting right now, she made it all by herself. But he made the most important thing in her life. He explained Olga that the experiments that she was conducting on herself, this is something normal. And the condition is that you go into the unknown and you understand that you don't have a map, you don't have any kind of orientation, and you have nobody to ask. And you understand that in every moment you can make a mistake and die. And Olga had a clinical death 4 times because she made mistakes. With fasting, with breathing, and it is possible, she made every mistake that is only possible. That's why Olga has, so to say, a certain amount of experience that helps you when she perceives your problems, your situations, because this situation she knows, this situation she experienced herself. With coffee she has also experienced. And Olga was seeking the truth. She was interested in researching how this is working. She wanted to find out who she is. And this was more important than her life. So this was a ticket in one direction. And people come here for something completely different. People come here for happiness. People are coming here for a certain experience that will give them, yes, a certain kind of joy. But when pain started to happen within Olga, or when nothing, no practice was successful at all, she remembered one Russian proverb. In dirty shoes you will not be allowed to enter heaven. So she had to clean her shoes. And people are one big abstraction, one big tension or defect. And people think that they have here something with capillaries, here something with muscles, and here something with the lungs. And then they will do something about the lungs, and then everything will be fine. But people don't understand that what we think about ourselves, what we present as this self in any kind, is one certain defect. Let's make a step into the direction of enlightenment now. And those who have attended the webinar, they will be reminded this. And we will speak about layers, but of course it is just so we may understand the structure easier. So nothingness creates something. Out of nothingness is something created. A negative particle appears and a positive particle appears, simply difference. And between two different vibrations, interaction happens. A certain wave appears. The first vibration that appears out of nothingness is the light, what we call God or consciousness. And in order for creation to take place, they have to occur some certain kind of defect. Otherwise everything stays identical. So information is included, and this information abstracts or slows down or denses the frequency, the original vibration. And then a new dissonance, so to say, is created. And then a layer is created, which after the consciousness is the body of light. This is a very high form of vibration, very pure vibration, but it is also the first form that has a certain kind of differences, a certain kind of uniqueness of a defect. Then more information is included, so the vibration slows more down. The next layer that is created is Bodhisattvic world. When the energy denses more, the next layer is created. Karmic worlds are created. And on this level, this is still without personality. Then after the karmic level, the next distortion takes place. And then the mental layer appears. The first ideas about personality appear. The next layer is the astral world, the energy is more dense, then etheric layer, then the physical body, and these all are steps of distortions. So what we present here as ourselves is a certain kind of distortion. Then after the physical plane there are the animal layers, not only the animals from this earth but also from other worlds. Then the world of the prets, the hungry ghosts. Then the strongest distortion, the hell's plan. And in order to achieve realization, We need to erase all these distortions. That's why we don't have one single block or tension, and everything else is fine. Whatever we are, this is a certain distortion. It is in any way a block. In any way, if you go on this path or the other path, you will have to let go of personification. And in our construction, there is a program of realization within. But in order for this program to be actually working, we need to change completely. You know, it is like in movies, some movies when they show like a challenge to death, a challenge with death. So if the person survives, this means he is worthy the initiation into the sacred knowledge. This means he has this certain, or he or she has these certain qualities which are needed to be initiated into magic, certain circles of magic, or certain circles of I don't know, mensory or whatever. And if he won't manage it, if he dies, this means it's no place for him to be. So if we die, this simply means we are not worth to be part of this community. This is not done for happiness, not for joy, not in order to become God. It's only a question about surviving. It is not a question if we die, it doesn't mean we are not worth, I'm sorry. It means we have no dignity for this. And Olga, as she already said, has met 4 or 5 people who has this quality. And it was a big present for Olga that one of these people, it was a woman, she visited her seminar.